Hello there. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Why Short. Today, I want to talk to you about something that just come to my attention, but I just could not ignore because of the question behind it, and that's HR 127. Today, join me as we get behind the why of HR 127. You know, before we go ahead and get started on this, though, take a moment to go ahead and like and subscribe to the page. Hit that little bell. That way we'll drop the new episode to you. You can catch it as soon as it drops. You can be right on top of it with us here. Also, I'd like you to share this page, share this conversation, get people involved. Because the more people we get involved talking, as we always say, the more we understand what's going on, the better chance we have of making an impact or even to make a change. I was reading, my little pocket constitution here. And I was reading the amendments. And let me just read this to you. This is an abbreviated version, of course, but this is the Second Amendment. It says, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed upon. Now, you have to ask yourself, what does it mean when it says shall not be infringed upon? And, the people there in Washington, D.C., they would lead you to believe that you need to have arms to protect yourself against, the boogeyman in the middle of the night or the, the gangbangers in your neighborhood. And so you don't need weapons for that. And that's debatable. Depending on which neighborhood you live in, you may need to be well arsenaled. But that's not the point. That right, that unalienable right, which means the government cannot take it away, was not about, boogeymen in the night. It's about boogeymen in Washington, D.C. It was so that if the government ever became tyrannical, the people would be armed and able to defend themselves against a tyrannical government. Now, am I telling you that you need to jump up and form a militia to attack Washington, D.C.? Well, of course not. We've seen that stupidity already. That's not what we're talking about. But again, I have to ask you the question, why? Why is this administration in its first, 8 weeks of being in office, are already working so hard to take away your constitutional rights? Now, there's millions of you who voted for this administration. And I know a lot of you who carry guns. A lot of you carry guns concealed. A lot of you carry guns. You have guns in your homes, in your cars. You hunt. You carry guns for personal protection. You carry guns because you want to be safe on yourself and to be a protecting agent in your community. But HR 127 is going to destroy all that. And yet, the people in Washington, D.C. read the same Constitution I just read to you, the same amendment, and they don't seem to understand what unalienable rights mean. They seem to think that rights come from the government. And that's a delusion. The rights don't come from the government. As a matter of fact, the power of the government comes from the people. If we choose that America should look a certain way or be a certain way, that's the way government is supposed to reflect. But what we have happened now in contemporary society is government is deciding what America should look like. So in this past year, 2020, if I've got my numbers correctly, there was about 38 million new gun owners and another few million in the month of January. So Americans want to own guns. And we've seen why. If you can remember the burning cities, Detroit, I think, had a little trouble up there. If not Detroit, I know there were some other states up north. Minneapolis is what I'm thinking of. Minneapolis had its trouble. Portland, Seattle, those cities were on fire. Communities were being burned and ravished. You can think back down in Missouri where the man and his wife were being encroached upon until they came outdoor with an AR-15 in an arm and a handgun and stood against this crowd that was going to break upon their property and ransack their home. And the only reason they didn't get overrun was because they were armed. Now imagine if the same couple was standing there and these people coming down had torn down their wrought iron fence, was coming at them in a mob, and you can say, go away, we don't want you on our property. You think that's going to make a difference to a mob? This is the argument that these people make, and they're hoping, again, they're hoping that you're still playing checkers. They say, we're going to make a law so these guns are not on the streets. Well, let me ask you a question. The people who are breaking into your homes, robbing, stealing, killing, raping, doing all these things, you think they're law-abiding citizens? You think the people who are right now buying guns in the back alleys and black market, you think those guys are going to stop and register their guns because HR 27 is passed? Guys who are right now who are told that because they are felons, they cannot legally possess a firearm. I tell you what, as a police officer, in my 31 years, you would be surprised how many felons I took guns off of. People who did not have a legal right to have a gun, who had been to prison and were on their way back to prison, but yet they were still carrying a gun. Why? Because they're law offenders. They don't pay attention to the law. So when this bill comes down, if they can get it to pass, who do you think is going to be disarmed? It won't be them. They'll still have their armed guards riding around with them. Look at all of them. They have one rule for them and one rule for us. They'll say, well, you don't need a fence, but then they all lived in fenced communities. You don't need armed security, but they have armed security. You don't need private schools. You don't need school vouchers, but they send all their children to private schools. And so yet they have a set of rules for us and another set of rules for them. And now it comes down to HR 127. And they have this congressman, what's her name? Sheila Lee, I think it is. And I don't think it's a mistake that they have a black congresswoman doing this, because it's supposed to be a sympathetic vote. See, this is what I mean, guys. This thing is so well orchestrated. We see that black face, we see that female, and also we're supposed to feel that everything she says is right. It's not about thinking. It's not about looking at the logic of it. It's about feeling. And she'll have this great emotional plea. I mean, she had a plea the other day, and it was on TV, and she was making, I mean, here's a congressman wanting to get the law of the world, of the nation changed, and she's quoting information that's completely wrong. She talked about an AR-15 weighing as much as 10 boxes. I mean, she obviously got an AR-15 and a 50 caliber mixed up. That's the only thing I can imagine, because she had no idea what she was talking about. But yet she's on the floor trying to get a bill passed. And if they are that unprepared up front, what do you think is going to happen on the back end? And if they get this bill passed, guys, think about this. About 40 million new gun owners, right? They're going to add taxes to every part of that. Read the bill. Read HR 127. There's going to be taxes and fees attached to that thing, up one side and down the other. You're going to pay for that gun 5 or 6 times. And if you know the government the way I do, you won't pay for it just once. The same way you don't pay for your car registration just once. You'll be paying for it every year. And they're going to be all up in your business, knowing where you go, when you go, how you go, and who you're going with. Guys, I told you before the election, this was not about the Republicans or the Democrats. This is about what America's going to look like. And right now, it is the elites. The elites are trying to change the landscape of America. How else can a web company censor the president of the United States? And nobody has a problem with it, because they have a purpose and a design. I don't know why that's so hard for us to see. It has happened time and time again in human history. And now it's threatening to happen to my beloved America. And that's just on the civic level. The real problem is on the spiritual level. Because when darkness rises and takes a hold of a nation, it's a reproach to its people. And we have millions of Christians in this nation. And we're, without trying to step on your toes, we're ignorantly going along with this evil plot. Not Republican or Democrat, no. The establishment of the elitism, where you have a segment of the population that has the divine right in their own mind to live off the backs and the toils of the lesser people. The last time that was done in great mass here in America, we called it the American slave industry, where you had an elite population that was in charge just because of who they were. Not because of what they did, not because of what they brought to the table, but because of their birth position, they were in charge. And if you weren't one of them, you had nothing. You had nothing. And you couldn't just become one of them. Remember they went so far, little American history, the one drop rule? One drop of blood other than white and you weren't white. That was all about elitism, guys. That was Southern elitism. It wasn't black, white in the sense that we think white man trying to keep it. It wasn't about that. It was about the elitism, about which dominating party or group is going to control. And that's why, if you look deep enough into American history, you will find that there were blacks that owned slaves and there was blacks that got into the elite society. There were people of all persuasions who got inside the elite persuasion. I know that's not comfortable to hear, but we're not talking about just people. We're talking about the human nature. You can go back as far as Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. Nimrod, the hunter of men, has always been about who's going to be in charge, who's going to provide the lifestyle that I deserve. Because I'm not going to work the field. I want a lot of crops. I want a big field. I want a big plantation. I want a big house. I don't want to clean it. I want to have a great meal 3 times a day, but I don't want to cook it and clean up behind it. That's somebody else's job. And by God, I'm going to fix it so that they can do exactly what I want them to do. And I'm going to make them feel good about it because I'm going to take care of my little people. Guys, HR 127 is just one more chip off the block. They're working hard to change America, whether through the abortion push that they're doing, whether it's, again, through that gender ideology that they're trying to push, whether it's through the critical race theory they're pushing through the educational system. Guys, it's on. And you and I better get on, or we're going to have to get off. I'm just saying, do yourself a favor. When you see all this stuff coming down, get behind the why. Because like it says in the Constitution, it's about we the people. If we don't do our part, guys, we have to just sit back and watch it burn. It's happened before. Don't let it happen again. Until next time, be a praying people. Turn, seek the Lord's face. And when you see this stuff come up, get behind the why. Ask the question, why would they want to do this? Until next time, peace out. Love you. Get behind the why.